Sayeed, Secretary CPV and OIA in the Ministry of External Affairs. Also joining us on the dais, Shri Suhail Ajaz Khan, our Ambassador to Saudi Arabia, as well as Shri Asim Raja Mahajan, Joint Secretary of the Gulf Division in the Ministry. Sir, may I hand over the floor to you for your opening remarks.
Good afternoon, friends. First of all, welcome for this press briefing on the visit of His Royal Highness Prince Mohammed bin Salman, Crown Prince and Prime Minister of Saudi Arabia, who was on his second state visit to India. He had arrived, as you know, on 9th morning, and he was accompanied by a high-level delegation comprising of almost 14 members and 8 ministers. And the context of the visit was, of course, the participation in the G20, but also to have the first to co-chair the first Leaders Summit of the Strategic Partnership Council, which was established, as you all know, between the two countries in October 2019, when Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi had visited Riyadh. So today the Crown Prince was accorded ceremonial welcome at the Rashtrapati Bhavan at the forecourt, and after that we had the Prime Minister hosted the Crown Prince for the restricted level discussions, followed by the Strategic Partnership Council meeting, as I mentioned, and then the Prime Minister also hosted a luncheon and a working lunch, for him. Thereafter, now in the evening, the Crown Prince would call on the Rashtrapati, and the Rashtrapati ji would also be hosting a banquet, and thereafter the Crown Prince is expected to depart this evening itself. So at the outset of the discussions which we had in the morning, the Crown Prince congratulated India for a very successful G20 meeting with lots of major outcomes in that meeting. The Prime Minister also acknowledged that the Kingdom had been very actively participating in the G20 meetings, and especially the two sides expressed their happiness at the launching of the India-Middle East Economic Corridor as one of the major outcomes of the G20 under India's presidency. The Prime Minister, Honorable Prime Minister, also congratulated the Kingdom on becoming a full member of the BRICS, of course, as a follow-up of their membership in the CO. Thereafter, the two sides had long discussions. The Crown Prince went on to mention that India and Saudi Arabia have a long history of friendship over several hundreds of years, and no instances of any differences or conflict. That kind of bonhomie he was emphasizing. He also mentioned that both the Kingdom and India are the two fastest economies, were the two fastest economies in 2022 last year, and continues to be so. And it is expected that the two countries would remain, the leading economic growth countries of the world for the next one decade or so. And so there are so many different areas in which the two countries could cooperate, and the two sides identified areas such as energy cooperation, defense, security, education, technology, transportation, healthcare, tourism and culture. Both sides also identified space and semiconductors as other areas of cooperation. They agreed to diversify the current status of their hydrocarbons relationship into a comprehensive energy partnership. Both sides, Prime Minister as well as the Crown Prince, extended their full support to the early implementation of the West Coast refinery projects, which, as you know, is a trilateral cooperation between Aramco, ADNOC and the Indian companies, for which funds to the tune of $50 billion are already earmarked. Now, the new thing which has come up is that the two sides agreed to set up a joint task force to help in identifying and channelizing the $100 billion investments which was actually promised by the Saudi side, half of which was for the refinery, and again to have a monitoring committee to ensure that the progress in the these refinery projects are done as per the the plans laid out by both sides. Discussions also revolved on the grids, various types of grids like power grid, gas grid, water grid, optical fiber network, so that the two countries could cooperate. Another important element was that the two sides also agreed to expedite the India-GCC FTA negotiations, which they felt would act as a catalyst for further strengthening our economic cooperation between the two sides. They also agreed to strengthen cooperation in the fintech field and also explore trading in the local currencies. This was discussed. The two leaders expressed their satisfaction at the volume of trade, the trade level with both countries have reached, India being the second largest trading partner of Saudi Arabia and Saudi being the fourth largest trading partner of India. Again, the Prime Minister also laid emphasis on certain sectors, and he mentioned certain sectors for cooperation. So he mentioned critical minerals as one area. Food security is another area which was mentioned, especially it is of Saudi interest, creation of food parks and other things. Since we have a very good startup ecosystem in India, Prime Minister emphasized on the need for setting up a startup bridge between India and Saudi Arabia. On the education and education field, the Prime Minister, in the light of the new education policy, emphasized on the need for strengthening cooperation in this sector, particularly in the student exchange program and university to university and institution to institution level collaborations. And he also suggested, our Prime Minister suggested that a joint working group on education and skill development could be set up to kind of explore this. Also in the context of culture and people to people, the cooperation in the field of film making also came up. So both sides agreed that this is another area where we can work together. I'm happy to share with you that during this visit, as many as 8 agreements have been signed. And the important ones, or I'll just read out to you, is Agreement 1 is the field of energy, which was signed by the Saudi Minister of Energy and our Minister of New and Renewable Energy. Then there was an agreement between the agreement in the field of digitalization and electronic manufacturing between the IT ministries of both sides. There was one agreement between the CVC of India and its counterpart, the Saudi Oversight and Anti-Corruption Authority. And the fourth agreement was between the National Archives. Then there was an agreement between the two investment entities, that is the Invest India on the Indian side and the Ministry of Investment on Saudi side. There was another agreement between the two Exim banks. There was also another agreement between the small and medium enterprises banks of two sides, that is SIDBI and the SME Bank of Saudi Arabia. And the last one was in the field of desalination. In addition to these, there are several other agreements which are under various stages of discussion. The prominent one is the one on grid connectivity, which is in the advanced stages of discussion. We are also separately discussing with the Saudi side a visa waiver agreement for diplomatic passports, which is not yet ready, but we hope that it would be ready soon. So these were some of the main points which had come up for discussions during this. The strategic partnership meeting took place in a very amicable and cordial manner, where the two leaders recognized the efforts made by the respective ministers. You know that it had two verticals, two headed by the foreign ministers and the other one headed by our Commerce and Industry Minister and Saudi Minister of Energy, and the other SOMs and other joint working groups. They agreed to have the meeting at regular frequency. The next one would be in Riyadh, hopefully next year. So this is in sum the parameters and counters on which the discussions have taken place. And the two sides have worked out a joint statement which will be released soon, and you will be able to access it later in the evening after the end of the visit. So these have been the outcomes. The minutes of the first leaders summit were also signed by the two leaders, our Prime Minister and the Crown Prince. And these are the minutes of encompassing all the discussions which had taken place and the sums of this. So that was also one of the things which was done. So that's about it. Is there anything? Yeah, so
thank you very much, sir. Before I open the floor for questions,
I would also just like to one point I say. There was also on the sidelines of this investment forum which took place, which was organized with 5 key themes. Again, ICT and entrepreneurship, chemicals and fertilizers, advanced manufacturing, food security, energy and sustainability. It was a joint event, but mainly the lead being taken by their Ministry of Investment and also supported by Invest India and FICCI. And we believe that